Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Starbound, watching the alien world grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked like a giant blue marble with silver streaks running across its surface. He had seen many worlds during his years in space, but this one was different. This was the home of the Zephyrians, and today would mark the first time humans had ever spoken to them. "Captain, we're getting their greeting signal," said Lisa Park from her position at the communications station. She was young but skilled, and Jake trusted her completely with the complex task of translating alien languages. "Put it through," Jake replied, straightening his uniform. He wanted to make a good first impression. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a tall, elegant being with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal. The creature's skin changed colors as it spoke, shifting from deep blue to bright gold. Its voice was musical, almost like singing. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire. We have waited long to meet the species that travels among the stars with such determination." Jake stepped forward. "Ambassador Veltar, I am Captain Jake Morrison. We are honored by your invitation to visit your world. We come in peace, hoping to learn about your people and share knowledge of our own." The ambassador's skin shifted to a warm green color. "Your words are well received, Captain Morrison. However, I must warn you that our customs may seem strange to your kind. We will land your ship at our capital city, where you will meet our council. But first, you must understand something important about our society." Ben Cooper, the chief engineer, leaned forward in his chair. He was a practical man who preferred to understand how things worked before dealing with them. "What do we need to know, sir?" Ambassador Veltar's expression became serious. "We Zephyrians do not walk alone. Each of our important citizens is protected by what we call an apex guardian. These are creatures from our world, intelligent and powerful. They have served our families for many generations. You will see them when you arrive, but do not be afraid. They will not harm you unless you threaten their bonded partner." Amy Foster, the team xenobiologist, spoke up from her station. She had studied alien life forms for years and was excited about this opportunity. "Ambassador, could you tell us more about these guardians? Are they like the animals on our world?" The ambassador's skin flickered between several colors before settling on a deep purple. "They are far more than simple animals, Dr. Foster. They are our partners, our protectors, and our friends. My own guardian, Shadowclaw, has been with my family for 3 generations. He is a Nethrix, one of the most honored types of guardian in our empire." Jake nodded, though he felt a slight chill at the name Shadowclaw. It sounded dangerous, but he kept his expression calm. "We understand. Ambassador, we look forward to meeting both you and your guardian." "Very well. Please follow the navigation signals we are sending to your ship. Land at the coordinates we provide. We will meet you there in 1 hour." The screen went dark and the bridge fell silent for a moment. Lisa was the first to speak. "Captain, their language is fascinating. They seem to communicate not just with words, but with the color changes in their skin. I think emotions play a big part in how they talk." Amy nodded enthusiastically, "And these guardians sound incredible. Intelligent predators that form bonds with their partners. I can't wait to study them." Ben was less excited. "Intelligent predators that are bigger than us and have been bred to protect their masters. What happens if they decide we're a threat?" Jake considered this. "We follow protocol. We show respect. We don't make sudden movements, and we remember that we're guests in their world. Everyone stay calm and professional." The Starbound descended through the planet's atmosphere, and soon they could see the Zephyrian capital city. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground like giant crystals, reaching toward the sky in impossible spirals and curves. Light reflected off every surface, creating a rainbow effect that made the entire city shimmer. "Look at that," Lisa whispered. "It's beautiful." "It's also very advanced," Ben added, studying his instruments. "Their technology is definitely ahead of ours in some areas." The ship landed in a large open area near the center of the city. Through The windows, they could see a group of Zephyrians waiting for them. But Jake's attention was immediately drawn to the massive creature. Standing behind the tallest Zephyrian, the beast was enormous, easily the size of a small building. It had the general shape of a wolf but was covered in scales that looked like armor. 6 powerful legs supported its massive frame, and its head was filled with teeth that could easily crush a human. Its eyes were intelligent and alert, constantly scanning the area around its master. That must be Shadowclaw, Amy breathed. He's magnificent. He's terrifying, Ben muttered. Jake gathered his team. Remember, we're here to make friends, not enemies. Everyone stay close to me, and let me do the talking until we understand their customs better. They left the ship and walked toward the waiting Zephyrians. The gravity on this world was slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel a bit bouncy. The air was clean and had a faint metallic smell that wasn't unpleasant. Ambassador Veltar stepped forward, his skin now a welcoming shade of gold. Captain Morrison, welcome to Zephyros Prime. Allow me to present my guardian, Shadowclaw. The massive creature's head turned toward Jake, and for a moment, human and alien predator stared at each other. Jake felt as if he were being examined, measured, and judged all at once. But instead of fear, he felt something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or even respect. He's impressive, Jake said honestly. How long have Nethrix been partners with your people? 4. Over 1,000 of your years, the ambassador replied. They choose us when we are young, and we remain bonded until death. Shadowclaw's family has served mine for 3 generations. As they spoke, Jake noticed something odd. Shadowclaw's attention never wavered from him. The creature's large eyes followed his every movement, and its head tilted slightly as if it were listening not just to his words but to something else entirely. Ambassador Veltar noticed this too. His skin flickered to a confused orange color. This is unusual. Shadowclaw rarely shows such interest in strangers. Apex Guardians are typically very focused on their bonded partners. Is that a problem? Jake asked. I am not certain. In all my years, I have never seen him behave this way. He seems to be studying you. The other Zephyrians in the group began to whisper among themselves, their skin colors shifting rapidly. Jake could tell they were concerned about something, but he didn't understand what. Perhaps we should continue with the formal introductions, Jake suggested, trying to ease the tension. My crew and I are excited to learn about your culture and discuss how our peoples might work together. Ambassador Veltar's skin returned to a more normal gold shade. Of course. Please follow me to the council chambers. But Captain Morrison, I must ask that you stay close to me. Shadowclaw's behavior is unprecedented, and I want to ensure there are no misunderstandings. As they walked toward the crystal buildings, Jake could feel the massive predator's eyes on him. Whatever was happening, he had the feeling that this first contact was about to become much more complicated than anyone had expected. The strange thing was, despite the creature's intimidating size and obvious power, Jake didn't feel threatened. Instead, he felt as if he were being recognized in some way that he couldn't quite understand. It was a feeling that would prove to be more important than any of them could have imagined. The council chambers were even more impressive than the city outside. The room was carved from a single massive crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. 12 Zephyrian council members sat in chairs that looked like they had grown from the floor itself. Their skin colors shifted constantly as they communicated with each other in ways that Jake was only beginning to understand. Ambassador Veltar led the human delegation to the center of the room. Shadowclaw followed close behind, but Jake noticed that the creature's attention remained fixed on him rather than his bonded partner. The other council members clearly noticed this too, and their skin colors became darker and more agitated. Honored Council, Ambassador Veltar began, his skin taking on formal patterns of blue and silver. I present Captain Jake Morrison and his crew from the species known as humans. They come from a world called Earth, seeking friendship and trade with our empire. The eldest council member, whose skin was a deep purple marked with gold streaks, spoke in a voice that reminded Jake of distant thunder. I am High Counselor Zethrin. Captain Morrison, we have heard much about your species. You are young by galactic standards, yet you have spread across many star systems in a remarkably short time. This interests us. Jake stepped forward, trying to ignore the massive predator that seemed to be analyzing his every move. High Counselor, we are honored by your interest. Humans have always been explorers and builders. We believe that cooperation between species benefits everyone. Words are easily spoken, another council member said, her skin flashing bright red. But how do we know if humans are worthy of our trust? How do we know you will not betray us when it suits your purposes? High Counselor Zethrin raised a hand and the room fell silent. Council Member Aralyn speaks truth. We have learned caution through long experience with other species. Some came to us with friendship on their lips, but conquest in their hearts. Jake felt his crew tense behind him, but he kept his voice calm. We understand your concerns, High Counselor. What would you have us do to prove our intentions? We will conduct the test of worth, Zethrin announced. This is an ancient tradition that allows us to see the true nature of those who would be our allies. Are you willing to undergo this test? Amy Foster whispered urgently behind Jake. Captain, we don't know what this test involves. It could be dangerous. Jake looked around the room at the assembled Zephyrians. Their skin colors were a mix of curious greens and cautious oranges. He could see that this was important to them, probably more important than any treaty or trade agreement they might sign. I will take the test, Jake said. But I ask that my crew be allowed to observe and return safely to our ship regardless of the outcome. High Counselor Zethrin's skin shifted to a pleased gold color. Your concern for your companions is noted and respected. They will be safe. The test has 3 parts, each designed to reveal different aspects of your character. Do you accept these conditions? I accept. The first test took place in what the Zephyrians called the endurance fields. It was a vast arena filled with obstacles that seemed to change and move on their own. Jake had to navigate through the course. While carrying a heavy crystal that grew heavier as time passed, Ben Cooper watched from the observation area with growing concern. This is insane, Lisa. That crystal must weigh 200 pounds by now, and he's been running for an hour. Lisa Park was monitoring the test through her translation equipment. The Zephyrians are impressed. They're saying he should have given up by now according to their calculations. Amy Foster was studying the Zephyrians' reactions. Look at their skin colors. They're showing surprise and respect. Whatever Jake is doing, it's working. Down in the arena, Jake felt like his legs were going to give out. The crystal was now so heavy he could barely lift it, and the obstacles kept getting more complex. But something inside him refused to quit. He had always been stubborn, sometimes to a fault, but right now that stubbornness was serving him well. When he finally reached the end of the course, he collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The crystal had become so heavy that it took 3 Zephyrians to lift it off his shoulders. High Counselor Zethrin came down to the arena floor, his skin bright with approval. Remarkable, the High Counselor said. Most candidates give up when the crystal reaches half that weight. Your persistence exceeds our expectations. Jake managed to stand, though his legs were shaking. On my world, we have a saying. It's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. The second test was mental rather than physical. Jake was presented with a complex puzzle that involved arranging crystal formations in specific patterns. The catch was that the crystals changed their properties based on how they were combined. And there seemed to be no logical solution. For 2 hours, Jake worked on the puzzle while the Zephyrians watched. He tried every approach he could think of, but nothing worked. The crystals would form beautiful patterns, but they never achieved the goal that had been set for him. Finally, Jake sat back and looked at the problem from a different angle. What if the goal isn't to solve the puzzle the way you expect? He said to himself, what if the solution is to change the rules? Instead of trying to arrange the crystals in the traditional patterns, Jake began combining them in ways that the Zephyrians had never seen before. He created new patterns that shouldn't have worked according to their understanding, but somehow did. The council members' skin colors went through rapid changes as they watched Jake's unconventional approach. When he finally achieved a solution that no Zephyrian had ever considered, the room erupted in excited conversation. "Fascinating," High Counselor Zethrin said. "You approached the problem from a direction we never considered. Your mind works differently than ours." "Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects," Jake replied. Throughout both tests, Shadowclaw had remained near the testing area, watching every move Jake made. The creature's behavior was becoming more unusual by the hour. It had started mimicking some of Jake's gestures, and its eyes never left the human captain. Ambassador Veltar approached Jake after the second test. "Captain, I must speak with you privately. Shadowclaw's behavior is unprecedented. He is acting as if he recognizes you, but that is impossible. He has never seen a human before today." Before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the council chambers. The great doors burst open, and a group of Zephyrians in military armor entered the room. Their skin was dark red with black markings, and they moved with obvious aggression. Leading them was a tall, imposing figure whose skin was almost black with streaks of blood red. Behind him walked another Apex Guardian, but this one was different from Shadowclaw. It was a massive serpent-like creature with multiple heads, each one scanning the room with predatory intelligence. "War Commander Zikalos," High Counselor Zethrin said, his skin shifting to wary orange. "You were not invited to these proceedings." "And yet here I am," Zikalos replied, his voice cold and hard. "I have come to challenge the wisdom of allying with these primitive beings. Humans are weak, short-lived, and have no understanding of proper order. They are not worthy of our empire." Jake stepped forward, despite the obvious danger. "War Commander, we have not finished the tests. Perhaps you should wait to see the results before making judgments." Zikalos laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Tests? You want to see a real test? Then face my guardian, Voidmaw, in single combat. Let us see how your human weakness stands against true power." The serpentine creature behind Zikalos raised its multiple heads, each one focusing on Jake with hungry eyes. The message was clear. This was not going to be a test of endurance or intelligence. This was going to be a fight for survival. But as the challenge was issued, something extraordinary happened. Shadowclaw moved away from Ambassador Veltar and positioned himself between Jake and the Voidmaw. The massive, Volf-like creature's scales began to change color, shifting from their normal dark gray to a bright silver that seemed to glow with inner light. The entire council chamber fell silent. Ambassador Veltar's skin went completely white with shock. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Shadowclaw, return to my side immediately." But Shadowclaw ignored his bonded partner completely. Instead, the creature looked back at Jake with what could only be described as a question in its intelligent eyes. It was as if the Apex Guardian was asking for permission to protect him. Jake realized that everything was about to change. The third test had just become something far more dangerous and significant than anyone had expected. The council chamber had become completely silent. Every Zephyrian in the room stared at Shadowclaw with expressions of shock and disbelief. The massive Apex Guardian stood between Jake and the threatening Voidmaw, his silver scales gleaming like armor in the crystal light. Ambassador Veltar's skin had turned completely white, a color Jake had never seen before. "Shadowclaw," the ambassador said, his voice shaking. "You will return to my side this instant. This is not your fight." But Shadowclaw did not move. Instead, the creature lowered his head slightly and made a sound deep in his throat that sounded almost like a question. His intelligent eyes remained fixed on Jake, waiting for something. War Commander Zikalos' skin flashed angry red. "What trickery is this? Has the human somehow corrupted your guardian, Veltar?" "That is impossible," High Counselor Zethrin said, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Apex Guardians cannot be controlled by outsiders. Their bond with their partners is absolute." Jake felt the weight of everyone's attention on him. The Voidmaw was coiled and ready to strike, its multiple heads weaving back and forth like deadly snakes. He knew that in a normal fight, he would have no chance against such a creature. But this was no longer a normal situation. I didn't ask for this, Jake said quietly, looking at Shadowclaw. But I won't let you fight my battles for me. To everyone's amazement, Jake stepped forward, moving past Shadowclaw to face the Voidmaw directly. But instead of taking a fighting stance, he did something that no one expected. He knelt down and placed his hand on Shadowclaw's massive head. "Thank you," Jake said simply. "But we do this together or not at all." Shadowclaw's response was immediate and shocking. The creature's scales shifted from silver to a warm gold color, and he made a sound that was almost like a purr. Then, instead of moving away from Jake, Shadowclaw lowered himself slightly so that Jake could climb onto his back. The gasps from the assembled Zephyrians were audible throughout the chamber. Ambassador Veltar actually stumbled backward, his skin cycling through colors so quickly it was hard to follow. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Shadowclaw has never allowed anyone except family members to ride him." "Not even me," War Commander Jikalos was furious. "Enough of this madness. Voidmaw, destroy them both." The Serpentine Guardian launched itself forward, its multiple heads striking like lightning. But Jake and Shadowclaw moved as if they had been partners for years. Shadowclaw's 6 legs carried them out of the way with incredible speed, while Jake held on and tried to think of a strategy. "Easy, boy," Jake said, patting Shadowclaw's neck. "We're not trying to kill it. We're trying to survive." As if understanding Jake's words, Shadowclaw changed his approach. Instead of attacking the Voidmaw directly, he began moving in a pattern that confused the serpent. Every time the Voidmaw struck, Shadowclaw was somewhere else, always keeping Jake safe. The Voidmaw became more and more frustrated. It was used to quick victories, overwhelming opponents with its multiple heads and venomous fangs. But this Volflight creature was too fast, too smart, and too protective of its rider, Jake. Watched the pattern of the Voidmaw's attacks and began to see something that others had missed. The creature was powerful, but it was also angry and confused. It had been ordered to attack, but it didn't understand why. "Shadowclaw, can you get me close to its main head?" Jake asked. "Not to hurt it, but to talk to it." Shadowclaw made a questioning sound, but then began moving in a new pattern. Using his incredible speed and agility, he brought Jake close to the Voidmaw's central head. While avoiding the striking fangs, Jake did something that made everyone in the chamber hold their breath. He reached out his hand toward the Voidmaw's head, just as he had done with Shadowclaw. "Easy," Jake said in a calm voice. "I'm not your enemy. You don't want to fight me any more than I want to fight you." The Voidmaw paused, its multiple heads weaving uncertainly. Its eyes, which had been filled with rage, now showed confusion. No one had ever spoken to it with such calm respect before. "You're not just a weapon," Jake continued. "You're intelligent. Just like Shadowclaw, you have your own thoughts and feelings. You don't have to follow orders that don't make sense." War Commander Jikalos shouted from across the chamber. "Voidmaw, I command you to attack. Destroy this human now." But the Serpentine Guardian was no longer listening to its bonded partner. Instead, it was focused entirely on Jake, studying him with the same intensity that Shadowclaw had shown. Slowly, carefully, it brought its main head closer to Jake's outstretched hand. When Jake's palm touched the Voidmaw's scales, something extraordinary happened. The creature's aggressive posture relaxed, and its multiple heads stopped their threatening movements. Its eyes, which had been filled with anger, now showed something else entirely: recognition. "I see you," Jake said quietly. "You're not just a guardian or a weapon, you're a person too, aren't you?" The Voidmaw made a sound that was almost like a sigh. Then, to everyone's shock, it began to coil itself into a resting position, its heads all turning toward Jake with curious interest. War Commander Jikalos' skin turned almost black with rage. "What have you done to my guardian? What kind of sorcery is this?" But High Counselor Zethrin was studying the scene with growing wonder. "It is not sorcery, War Commander. It is something we have never seen before. The human treats Apex Guardians as equals, not as property." Amy Foster was recording everything from the observation area, her scientific mind racing. "Lisa, do you see what's happening?" The Guardians aren't just bonding with Jake. They're recognizing something in him that they've never encountered before. Lisa Park was monitoring the translations, but she was also watching the expressions on the Zephyrians' faces. The Council members are amazed. Their skin colors show respect and fear at the same time. Then Cooper was more practical in his observations. Whatever Jake is doing, it's working. But I don't think he planned this. He's just being himself. Down in the chamber, Jake carefully climbed down from Shadowclaw's back. Both Apex Guardians watched him with attention that was almost reverent. He looked around at the assembled Zephyrians, seeing mixtures of awe, fear, and confusion on their faces. I didn't do anything special, Jake said. I just treated them with respect. On my world, we've learned that intelligence deserves recognition, regardless of what form it takes. Ambassador Veltar's skin was slowly returning to normal colors, but his voice still shook. Captain Morrison, what you have done is beyond our understanding. Apex Guardians choose their partners when they are young, and that bond lasts until death. They do not transfer their loyalty to strangers. Maybe they're not transferring their loyalty, Jake suggested. Maybe they're just expanding it. Shadowclaw still cares about you, Ambassador, but he also recognizes that I'm not a threat. I'm a potential friend. To test this theory, Jake walked over to Ambassador Veltar and extended his hand. May I? The ambassador looked uncertain, but he nodded. Jake placed his hand on Veltar's shoulder in a gesture of friendship and respect. Shadowclaw watched this interaction closely. Then, to everyone's relief, the massive guardian moved to stand between both Jake and his original partner, his scales shifting to a protective silver. It was clear that he was now guarding both of them. Remarkable, High Counselor Zethrin said. The Guardian has not abandoned his original bond. He has created a new one while maintaining the old. This should be impossible according to everything we know about Apex Guardian behavior. War Commander Jekalos was not convinced. This changes nothing. Humans are still weak and primitive. One trick with Apex Guardians does not make them worthy allies. But as he spoke, something else happened that silenced him completely. Other Apex Guardians began entering the chamber. They came from all over the city, drawn by something that the Zephyrians could not understand. Lions with crystal manes, eagles with wings that sparkled like diamonds, bears with fur that changed colors like their partner's skin. All of them were focused on Jake, with the same intense curiosity that Shadowclaw and Voidmaw had shown. They moved slowly, carefully, but with obvious interest. It was as if they had all sensed something that called to them. Jake stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by some of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and felt completely safe. They weren't looking at him as prey or as a threat. They were looking at him as something they had never encountered before, a being who saw them as equals. I think, Jake said quietly, we need to talk about what partnership really means. High Counselor Zethrin skin had turned a deep, thoughtful blue. Yes, Captain Morrison. I believe we do. The council chamber had become crowded with Apex Guardians of every type imaginable. Crystal-maned lions sat next to diamond-winged eagles, while bears with color-changing fur stood beside creatures that looked like living shadows. All of them were focused on Jake with the same intense curiosity that Shadowclaw had shown from the beginning. High Counselor Zethrin looked around the chamber with growing alarm. His skin had turned a deep worried purple. This has never happened before. Apex Guardians do not gather like this. They stay with their bonded partners unless commanded otherwise. Ambassador Veltar was trying to maintain his composure, but his skin colors were shifting rapidly. Council members, perhaps we should move to emergency protocols. If the Guardians are acting strangely, there could be danger. But Jake noticed something that the Zephyrians were missing. None of the Apex Guardians looked aggressive or threatening. They were curious, even excited, but not dangerous. It was like watching a group of intelligent animals who had discovered something wonderful and wanted to understand it better. They're not acting strangely, Jake said quietly. They're acting naturally, maybe for the first time in their lives. War Commander Jekalos stepped forward, his skin dark red with anger. What do you mean by that, human? Amy Foster had been watching from the observation area, and now she came down to the main floor. Her scientific training was helping her see patterns that others missed. "Captain, I think I understand what's happening." "May I explain?" Jake nodded, and Amy addressed the assembled Zephyrians. "On Earth, we study animal behavior. One thing we've learned is that highly intelligent animals form bonds based on mutual respect and understanding, not just dominance and submission." "That is impossible," War Commander Shekalo said. "Apex Guardians bond with their partners through our superior telepathic abilities. We control them. Do you?" Amy asked. "Or have you been misunderstanding your own Guardians for thousands of years?" She walked over to Shadowclaw, who was still standing protectively near both Jake and Ambassador Veltar. "Look at his behavior. He hasn't abandoned his original partner. He's protecting both of you now. That's not a sign of a confused animal. That's a sign of an intelligent being making his own choices." High Counselor Zethrin S. skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Dr. Foster, are you suggesting that our understanding of Apex Guardian behavior is incorrect?" "I'm suggesting that your Guardians are more than you realized," Amy replied. "They're not just intelligent predators. They're empathic beings who can sense the true nature of those around them. They don't bond with the strongest or most dominant. They bond with those who show them genuine respect and understanding." The implications of Amy's words began to sink in throughout the chamber. Several council members began speaking to each other in rapid, excited tones, their skin colors flashing through multiple hues. Lisa Park had been monitoring the translations, and now she looked concerned. "Captain, I'm picking up conversations throughout the city. Word is spreading about what happened here. Some Zephyrians are excited, but others are very upset." Ben Cooper was checking his communication equipment. "I'm getting reports from other parts of the Empire, too. It seems like Apex Guardians everywhere are acting differently. Some are staying with their partners, but others are questioning orders." War Commander Jekalos' skin turned almost black with rage. "This is disaster. If Guardians start disobeying commands, our entire society will collapse. The human must be removed before he causes more damage." But before anyone could respond, Shadowclaw made a sound that was almost like a growl. The massive Guardian moved closer to Jake, his scales shifting to a protective silver. The message was clear. Anyone who threatened Jake would have to go through him first. More importantly, other Guardians in the chamber began to respond the same way. They moved closer to Jake, forming a protective circle around him. Their behavior was coordinated but not commanded. They were making their own choices. Ambassador Veltar watched this with growing amazement. "Shadowclaw, you would protect this human even against me?" The massive Guardian looked at his original partner with what could only be described as sadness. Then he moved to stand between Jake and the ambassador, but in a way that protected both of them. His actions spoke louder than words. He would not choose between them, but he would not let either be harmed. "He's not choosing sides," Jake realized. "He's expanding his definition of family." Amy Foster was recording everything, her scientific mind racing with the implications. "This is revolutionary. Captain, I think we're witnessing the evolution of an entire species relationship. The Apex Guardians aren't rejecting their original bonds. They're growing beyond them." High Counselor Zethrin called for order, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Council members, we must consider what this means for our society. If Apex Guardians are truly making independent choices, then many of our traditions and laws may need to be reconsidered." A younger council member, whose skin was bright with excited colors, spoke up. "High Counselor, perhaps this is not a disaster, but an opportunity. If our Guardians are more intelligent and independent than we thought, then our partnerships with them could become stronger, not weaker." But War Commander Jekalos was not convinced. "You speak of opportunity, but I see only chaos. What happens to our military structure if Guardians refuse to follow orders? What happens to our government if Guardians choose their own loyalties?" As if to answer his question, a message arrived from across the city. A young Zephyrian military officer appeared on the communication screen, his skin flashing urgent colors. "War. Commander, we have a situation. Guardian units throughout the city are refusing to participate in aggressive training exercises. They will defend their partners, but they will not attack designated targets without clear justification. War Commander Jekyllos's skin turned almost purple with rage. This is exactly what I feared. The humans' influence is spreading like a disease, but Jake stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. It's not a disease, War Commander, it's understanding. Your guardians have always been intelligent and empathic. They've just never had anyone recognize that intelligence before. To demonstrate his point, Jake walked over to the Voidma, who was still coiled peacefully in the center of the chamber. May I? He asked, extending his hand. The Serpentine Guardian considered for a moment, then lowered one of its heads to Jake's. Jake spoke to it gently, treating it as an equal rather than a tool. You've been forced to fight battles that made no sense to you, haven't you? Jake said, you've been ordered to attack beings who pose no real threat. It went against your nature, but you obeyed because you thought you had no choice. The Voidmaw's multiple heads moved in what looked like a nod. Its eyes, which had been filled with confusion and anger, now showed something else. Relief. War Commander Jakalos watched this interaction with growing horror. Voidmaw, you will return to my side immediately. We have battles to fight, enemies to defeat. But the Serpentine Guardian did not move. Instead, it looked at its original partner with what could only be described as disappointment. Then it turned back to Jake, clearly choosing to stay near the human who had treated it with respect. Your guardian isn't rejecting you, Jake told. The War Commander. He's rejecting the way you've been using him. There's a difference. Amy Foster was taking notes as fast as she could. Captain, this is bigger than we thought. We're not just witnessing a change in individual guardians. We're seeing the beginning of a social revolution. Reports continued to come in from across the Empire. Some Apex Guardians were staying with partners who treated them well, but others were leaving those who had treated them poorly. The carefully structured Zephyrian society was beginning to crack along lines that had been invisible before. High Counselor Zethrin's skin had turned a deep, contemplative blue. Captain Morrison, whether you intended it or not, you have begun. Something that will change our entire civilization. The question now is, what do we do about it? Jake looked around the chamber at the assembled Zephyrians and their guardians. He saw fear in some faces, wonder in others, and confusion in many. But he also saw something else, possibility. We work together, Jake said simply. Humans and Zephyrians, partners and guardians. We build something new based on mutual respect instead of dominance. And if we refuse? War Commander Shekalos asked. Jake gestured to the Apex Guardians surrounding him. Then you'll have to explain to your own partners why you're choosing conflict over cooperation. And I don't think that's a conversation you want to have. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of Jake's words sank in. The old ways were ending, whether the Zephyrians wanted it or not. The only question was whether they would help build something better or fight a losing battle against change itself. 3 days had passed since the events in the council chamber, and the Zephyrian capital city was in chaos. Reports came in hourly from across the Empire telling the same story. Apex Guardians everywhere were making their own choices about who they would serve and how they would serve them. Jake stood in the guest quarters that had been provided for his crew. Looking out at the crystal city below, he could see groups of Zephyrians gathering in the streets, their skin colors flashing with heated discussions. Some gatherings looked peaceful, while others seemed more agitated. Captain, Lisa Park said from her communication station, I'm getting reports from 17 different star systems. The Guardian situation is spreading faster than anyone expected. Ben Cooper looked up from his equipment maintenance. Is that good or bad? Both, Amy Foster replied, reviewing her research notes. The Guardians who were treated well are becoming better partners than ever before. But the ones who were mistreated are refusing to cooperate at all. Jake nodded grimly. And War Commander Jekalos is using that to argue that humans are destroying their society. As if summoned by his words, the door chimed and Ambassador Veltar entered. His skin was a worried orange color and he looked tired. Behind him, Shadowclaw patted quietly, his scales a neutral gray. "Captain Morrison," the ambassador began, "I bring urgent news from the Council. War Commander Jakalos has gathered support from the military districts. He is demanding that all humans be expelled from the Empire immediately." "And what does the Council say?" Jake asked. "We are divided. Some see the wisdom in your approach to Guardian partnership. Others fear the collapse of our traditional ways. High Counselor Zethrin has called for a final gathering to decide the matter." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Ambassador, I never intended to cause problems for your people. We came here seeking friendship, not revolution." Shadowclaw moved closer to Jake, his scales shifting to a supportive blue color. The massive Guardian had been staying close to both Jake and Ambassador Veltar, demonstrating that his expanded loyalty was not a rejection of his original bond but an addition to it. "Perhaps," Ambassador Veltar said slowly, "revolution is exactly what we needed. Shadowclaw and I have been partners for many years, but I realize now that I never truly understood him. I gave orders and he obeyed, but I never asked what he wanted or how he felt." The ambassador approached his apex guardian and, for the first time, placed his hand on Shadowclaw's head in the same gentle way he had seen Jake do. The guardian's response was immediate and dramatic. His scales shifted to a brilliant gold color, and he made a sound that was almost like a purr. "He seems happier," Amy observed. "His body language is more relaxed than I've ever seen it." "Because he feels respected," Jake said. "That's all any intelligent being really wants." The final council gathering was held in the largest chamber in the city. Representatives from across the Empire had come to witness the decision that would shape their future. The chamber was packed with Zephyrians of all kinds, from high-ranking officials to common citizens. Many had brought their apex guardians, creating a mix of species that had never been seen before. High Counselor Zethrin stood at the center of the chamber, his skin cycling through formal patterns of blue and silver. "Citizens of the Empire, we gather today to decide a question that will affect all our lives. Do we maintain our traditional ways, or do we embrace the changes that the human presence has brought?" War Commander Jekalos stepped forward, his skin dark red with anger. "The choice is clear. These humans have corrupted our guardians and thrown our society into chaos. They must be removed before they cause more damage." But before he could continue, something unexpected happened. Apex guardians throughout the chamber began to move. They didn't attack or threaten, but they repositioned themselves in ways that clearly showed their own preferences. Some stayed close to their original partners, while others moved toward different areas of the chamber. Most remarkably, many of the guardians moved to positions where they could see Jake clearly. They weren't abandoning their partners, but they were showing that they had their own opinions about the situation. "You see?" War Commander Jekalo said, his voice rising. "They no longer obey proper authority. This is exactly the chaos I warned about." But High Counselor Zethrin was studying the Guardians' behavior with growing understanding. "War Commander, look more carefully. They are not acting chaotically. They are acting with purpose and intelligence. They are participating in this gathering as equals, not as property." Jake stepped forward, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. "High Counselor, may I speak?" "You may, Captain Morrison. Your words have already changed our world. Let us hear what you have to say." Jake looked around the chamber, seeing Zephyrians and Guardians who were all waiting for his words. He thought carefully about what he wanted to say. "I didn't come here to destroy your traditions or change your society. I came here to build bridges between our peoples. But I've learned something important during my time here. True partnerships aren't built on control or dominance. They're built on mutual respect and understanding." He gestured to Shadowclaw, who was standing nearby with Ambassador Veltar. Shadowclaw didn't reject his original partner when he chose to protect me. He showed that love and loyalty can grow instead of being limited. He proved that intelligence and empathy can create bonds that are stronger than any chain of command. War Commander Jekalos interrupted angrily. "Pretty words, but what happens when Guardians refuse to fight? What happens when they choose their own missions instead of following orders?" Jake turned to face the war commander directly. What happens when you treat intelligent beings as partners instead of tools? You get allies who fight because they believe in the cause, not because they're forced to. You get companions who will die for you because they choose to, not because they have no choice. To demonstrate his point, Jake walked over to the Voidmaw, who had been resting quietly near the chamber wall. The Serpentine Guardian had been staying close to Jake since their encounter, but he had made no attempt to abandon War Commander Jekalos entirely. Your Guardian doesn't hate you, Jake told the War Commander. He's just tired of being used as a weapon without understanding why. Show him the same respect you'd show any intelligent ally, and you'll have a partner who's stronger than any tool. Jake placed his hand on the Voidmaw's head, and the creature's multiple heads turned toward War Commander Jekalos. There was no anger in the Guardian's eyes now, only a question: would his original partner learn to see him as more than a weapon? The chamber fell silent as War Commander Jekalos stared at his Apex Guardian. For a long moment no one moved or spoke. Then, slowly, the War Commander approached the Voidmaw. I have never asked what you wanted, he said quietly. I have only given orders. The Voidmaw's heads moved in what looked like a nod. One head moved closer to the War Commander, offering him the same choice Jake had been given: respect or rejection. War Commander Jekalos reached out hesitantly and touched his Guardian's scales. The Voidmaw's response was immediate. The creature's aggressive posture relaxed, and its eyes showed an emotion that had been absent for years: happiness. This is what partnership looks like, Jake said to the assembled gathering. Not control, not dominance, but mutual respect between equals. High Counselor Zethrin S. skin had turned a brilliant gold color. Captain Morrison, you have shown us something we had forgotten. Our Guardians are not possessions or tools. They are citizens of our empire, deserving of the same respect we give to each other. The vote was unanimous. The Zephyrian Council officially recognized Apex Guardians as equal partners in their society. New laws were passed ensuring that Guardians would be treated with respect and that their own choices would be honored. Jake was offered the position of the first human ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire. He accepted with the understanding that he would help both species learn to work together as equals. The signing ceremony was held in the same chamber where the crisis had begun. Jake stood with High Counselor Zethrin, Ambassador Veltar, and even War Commander Jekalos, who had become one of the strongest supporters of the new partnership model. Shadowclaw stood nearby, his scales shifting through happy colors as he watched the ceremony. He had not chosen between Jake and Ambassador Veltar after all. He had simply shown that there was room in his heart for both. As Jake signed the Apex Accord, he looked around at the assembled Zephyrians and Guardians. He saw partnerships being formed that were based on respect rather than control, alliances built on understanding rather than dominance. This is just the beginning, he said as he finished signing. What we've learned here can change how all species interact with each other. We've proven that intelligence and empathy can bridge any gap, overcome any difference. News of the Apex Accord spread throughout the galaxy within weeks. Other species began to take notice of this new model of cooperation. Some were curious, others were skeptical, but all were watching to see what would happen next. Jake stood in his new office, looking out at the crystal city that had become his home. Shadowclaw lay nearby, a constant reminder of the bond that had started everything. In the distance, he could see other species arriving at the spaceport.